Hi, and welcome back to the Kitsch and Whimsy fabric flower tutorial. Today is the second part of this tutorial where we're going to learn how to cut out our fabric and sew it into a strip that will eventually become the base of our flower, the body of it with the fabric part. So today what you're going to need is your fabric, your rotary cutter or scissors, and a ruler with a mat, a pair of scissors, a chopstick or a turning stick, an iron, and your sewing machine. So the first thing you're going to do is lay out your fabric onto the board and just kind of line it up to one of the straight lines. On this board you'll notice there are little squares. Each square is an inch. And then you'll take your ruler, and my favorite rulers have a little lip on the edge of it so you can actually catch the board at the bottom and it prevents it from slipping. If you don't have one of those, you just want to make sure you're extra careful that it doesn't wobble when you're cutting. So for this part, you can choose to either cut a 2-inch strip, a 2.5-inch strip, or a 3-inch strip. For this sized flower, I use a 2.5-inch strip. So that's what I'm going to cut today. So I've got 1, 2.5. I'm going to line it up there and hold my ruler steady. Then I'm going to take my rotary cutter, line it right up to the edge, and just slide it all the way through. And there we have it. One little string. Okay, so there's my strip. So for this next part, it's important to know what the different sides of your fabric are. There's a right side and a wrong side. The right side of the fabric is going to be your patterned side that's the most colorful. The back side of your fabric is called the wrong side. So when I say to sew it right side to right side, or right sides facing, then you'll want the patterned part of your fabric to be touching when you sew it. If we were doing it wrong side to wrong side, it would be opposite. But for this, we're going to go right side to right side. So next we're going to take this strip over to our sewing machine and sew up the two ends. Okay, so over here is my sewing machine, and there are two big things to note. The first is this little dial here. This dial is going to reflect the stitch length that my needle is going to do. So 1 is going to be really close together, and 4 is going to be the furthest apart. I like to generally keep my stitch at about a stitch length of 2. So for this, I'm going to fold my fabric in half, right side to right side, and stick it under my needle. The next thing that you'll want to note is find your reverse button. It's important to always back stitch, which means to reverse back and then go forward again so that it locks your stitch in place. So for this, I'm going to sew forward and back all the way to the edge, and then back and forward. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Okay, now that I have my two corners fully sewn, I'm going to take the same strip over to my ironing board. I'm going to grab my scissors and my turning stick on the way. And then over here, I'm going to do a couple things. The first is to trim off the strings and this little excess on the corner. Toss that away. That way we don't have a whole bunch of fabric bulging at the end. Then I'm going to take my corners and turn them out, and I'm going to use my turning stick or my chopstick to push those corners fully out so that they're good and pointed. So there's one side, and there's the other. I'll throw this up on my sewing table. And the last thing we're going to do at this station is to iron our strip in half. That way it'll be nice for sewing in the basting stitch, and it will also make the edges really nice on your finished flower. Okay, so now my strip is ironed. So So the last step for today is to go back over to our sewing machine. And over here we're going to sew in our basting stitch. So for the basting stitch, you want to use the longest possible stitch length. For this part, you do not, I repeat, do not want to back stitch it. You don't want to lock your stitch in place. This is because you're actually going to pull on one of the strings in order to gather your strip together. So for this, I am going to place my fabric at the edge of my foot, and I'm just going to sew all the way to the end without back stitching any of it. So here I go. That completes it. So this is all you're going to do for today. Once you get this strip all the way done, the next step we're going to go through next week, which is going to be actually gathering it into our flower body. So for now, go ahead and get your fabric cut out and made into your basting strip, and then let us know how it goes. And then check back with us on Friday next week to go over part 3. Hope you have a great day.